Everyone froze when my husband walked in with a woman and two grown children. The room went from laughter to dead silence in less than a heartbeat. He put his hand on my shoulder and proudly said, with this smile I'd seen 1,000 times before, "Honey, they're part of us now." But he wasn't the only one who had been keeping a secret. And what happened next? Well, that's why you're still watching, isn't it? My name is Margaret. I'm 73 years old. I know what you're thinking when you hear that number. You're picturing some fragile little old lady with trembling hands and a weak voice. But let me tell you something about being 73. You don't get to this age without learning a thing or two about survival. You don't make it through nearly 5 decades of marriage without developing a spine made of something stronger than bone. I'm a mother, a grandmother. I've raised 3 daughters in a house that smelled like fresh bread every Sunday and had a garden that bloomed even in the harshest summers. I've been the woman who everyone called when they needed advice, when they needed a shoulder, when they needed someone to tell them the truth even when it hurt. I've been the steady hand, the calm voice, the one who held everything together when the world tried to tear it apart. For 47 years, I woke up next to the same man, Richard. We met when I was 24 and he was 26 at a church social that I almost didn't attend. My sister had to drag me there, complaining that I spent too much time with my nose in books and not enough time actually living. Richard was standing by the refreshment table, looking uncomfortable in a suit that was slightly too tight around the shoulders. He had kind eyes. That's what I noticed first. Kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. We married 8 months later. It wasn't a long courtship, but back then, we didn't overthink things the way people do now. When you knew, you knew. Or at least that's what I thought. I thought I knew him. I really did. I thought I knew the way he took his coffee. 2 sugars, just a splash of cream. I thought I knew his dreams, his fears, his secrets. I thought I knew the sound of his breathing when he slept, the way he hummed while he shaved in the morning, the exact tone his voice took when he was lying. That last one? I was right about that. I just didn't realize it until much later. We built a life together, a beautiful life, at least from the outside. 3 daughters, Carolyn, the eldest, who became a lawyer and could argue her way out of anything. Jennifer, the middle child, who inherited my love of gardening and her father's business sense. And Sarah, our youngest, who had her father's eyes and my stubborn streak. They all grew up, moved out, started families of their own. I became a grandmother to 7 beautiful souls who called me Nana and made my heart feel too big for my chest every time they visited. Richard and I, we settled into that comfortable rhythm that long marriages fall into. We had our routine, coffee together in the morning, reading the newspaper, me tending my garden while he worked on whatever project he'd taken on in the garage. Dinner at 6, television until 9, bed by 10. Weekends were for the grandchildren. Holidays were for the whole family gathered around a table that groaned under the weight of too much food and too much love. I thought we were happy. I thought we had earned our peace, our quiet contentment. I thought we were looking forward to these golden years together, watching our family grow, watching the seasons change from the porch swing Richard had built with his own hands. I was looking forward to my 73rd birthday. It wasn't a milestone number, not like 70 or 75 would be, but our family always made a fuss about birthdays. It's tradition. It's what we do. Caroline had been planning it for weeks, calling me every few days with updates about the menu, the guest list, the decorations. She wanted it to be special, she said. She wanted it to be perfect. And Richard? He'd been acting strange for days leading up to it. Nervous, excited. He kept telling me he had a surprise planned, something special, something that would change everything. He had this look in his eyes, this gleam that I couldn't quite read. I thought maybe he'd planned a trip somewhere, or bought me some extravagant gift we couldn't really afford. I joked with him about it, tried to get him to give me a hint. He just smiled and said, "You'll see, Margaret, you'll see." I should have known then. I should have heard the warning in those words. But when you've been with someone for nearly 50 years, you stop looking for the red flags. You stop questioning. You trust. What a fool I was. The day of my birthday started like any good day should. The sun was shining through our bedroom curtains in that particular way that makes everything look softer, kinder. Richard brought me coffee in bed, which he only did on special occasions. He kissed my forehead and wished me a happy birthday, and for just a moment, everything felt exactly as it should. I could hear Caroline downstairs already, had been there since early morning, taking over my kitchen with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. The smell of her famous cinnamon rolls wafted up the stairs. Jennifer arrived shortly after with her husband and kids, and the house suddenly filled with that particular kind of chaos that only grandchildren can create. Running footsteps, laughter, excited voices calling, "Nana, Nana." I put on the dress Jennifer had given me for Christmas, a soft lavender that she said brought out my eyes. I did my hair, put on the pearls Richard had given me for our 25th anniversary. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a woman who had lived a full life, lines around my eyes from years of smiling, silver hair that I'd stopped dyeing a decade ago because Richard said he loved it, said it made me look distinguished, hands marked with age spots and the small scars from years of gardening. I looked like someone's grandmother, someone's wife, someone who had earned the right to a peaceful, joyful celebration. I had no idea I was looking at a woman about to go to war. By early afternoon, the house was full. Not just family, but friends we'd collected over the decades, neighbors, people from church. The house was decorated with streamers in my favorite colors, purple and silver. There were flowers everywhere, because everyone knows I love flowers. The dining room table was covered with food, dish after dish brought by loving hands. My grandchildren had made me cards with their clumsy, beautiful handwriting. "We love you, Nana. You're the best. Happy birthday." Each card was a knife in my heart now, knowing what was coming. The atmosphere was exactly what you'd expect, warm, sentimental, full of laughter and love. People kept hugging me, kissing my cheek, telling me how wonderful I looked, how blessed I was to have such a beautiful family. I smiled and thanked them and felt genuinely happy, genuinely content. Richard was moving through the crowd with this barely contained energy. He kept checking his watch, stepping out to look through the front window. He was waiting for something, someone. Sarah noticed it too. She pulled me aside at one point and whispered, "Is Dad okay? He seems really nervous about something." I just smiled and told her he'd been planning a surprise. "You know how your father gets about surprises," I said. "He's terrible at keeping secrets." Oh, the irony of those words. The bitter, bitter irony. Around 3 o'clock, Richard clinked his glass with a spoon. The sharp, clear sound cut through all the conversation and laughter. Everyone turned to look at him. He was standing in the center of the living room, and he had that look on his face, the one he got when he was about to give a speech at someone's wedding or retirement party. Confident, pleased with himself. "Everyone, everyone, if I could have your attention for just a moment," he said, his voice carrying easily through the suddenly quiet room. People smiled, settled into their seats, turned to face him. They thought this would be a toast, a sweet speech about his wife of 47 years, maybe an announcement about a trip, a gift, something sentimental and appropriate for the occasion. My daughters were smiling. Caroline had her phone out, ready to record what she thought would be a touching moment. Jennifer was already tearing up a little because she's always been the emotional one. Sarah was holding her youngest on her hip, bouncing her gently, watching her father with affection. I was standing near the mantel, a plate of food I'd barely touched in my hands. I was smiling too, waiting to hear what my husband of nearly 50 years had to say. I want to thank everyone for being here today to celebrate Margaret, Richard began, and people nodded, murmured agreement. 73 years of a life well lived, 47 years as my wife. She's been my rock, my anchor, the love of my life. The words should have warmed me. Instead, I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Something about his tone was off. This didn't sound like a man about to express his gratitude. This sounded like a man about to make a confession. But there's something I need to share with all of you today, Richard continued, and the room seemed to lean forward slightly, curious now. Something important, something that makes our family even bigger and more blessed than we knew. Caroline's smile faltered slightly. She lowered her phone a little. Jennifer's husband put his hand on her shoulder, and I saw her stiffen slightly. They felt it too, that wrongness in the air. I'm going to ask some very special people to join us now, Richard said, and he walked toward the front door. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I could hear someone's watch ticking. I could hear a car passing on the street outside. Richard opened the door, and my entire world shifted on its axis. A woman walked in first. She was younger than me, maybe in her late 50s, early 60s. Blonde hair gone mostly gray, pulled back in a neat bun. She was wearing a dress that was too formal for the occasion, like she'd dressed for a wedding or a funeral. Her face was pale, nervous. Her eyes swept the room and then quickly looked down at the floor. Behind her came two adults, a man and a woman, probably in their late 20s or early 30s. They had Richard's eyes, both of them, that same particular shade of hazel that I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. The same eyes I'd passed on to none of my daughters because genetics had given them all my green instead. But these two, these strangers, they had Richard's eyes. I knew. In that instant, I knew exactly what was happening. But knowing and accepting are two very different things. My mind was screaming one thing while my body stood frozen, still holding that stupid plate of food like it mattered. Like anything mattered except the bomb that was about to detonate in the center of my living room. Richard put his hand on my shoulder. I felt the weight of it, the presumption of it, the audacity of it. His hand, the hand that had held mine at our wedding. The hand that had held each of our newborn daughters, the hand that had stroked my hair when I was sick, that had wiped away my tears when my mother died, that hand on my shoulder like he had any right to touch me. Honey, he said, and his voice was so proud, so genuinely pleased with himself. I want you to meet Diana and her children, our children, Michael and Patricia. Our children. Our children. Those two words crashed into me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. The room tilted and spun, and I had to lock my knees to keep from falling. Someone gasped. I think it was Jennifer, or maybe it was one of the neighbors, or maybe it was me. Maybe the sound came from my own throat, and I didn't even recognize it. I know this is a shock, Richard continued, speaking to the room now, still with his hand on my shoulder like he was steadying me, like he was the support I needed instead of the knife in my back. I know this isn't what anyone expected, but I've been carrying this secret for 30 years, and I can't do it anymore. I can't keep this beautiful part of my life hidden away. 30 years, 30 years. The number echoed in my head. 30 years of lies, 30 years of deception, 30 years of this man standing in church next to me, singing hymns about truth and righteousness. 30 years of family dinners and anniversaries and holidays. 30 years of him looking me in the eye and calling me the love of his life. All of it. Every moment, every word, every touch. All of it contaminated by this lie. I looked at the woman, Diana. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She was staring at a point somewhere past my left shoulder, her hands clasped so tightly in front of her that her knuckles were white. This woman who had been sleeping with my husband for 3 decades. This woman who had borne his children while I thought I knew everything about his life. I looked at the two young people, Michael and Patricia. They looked uncomfortable, but not surprised. They'd known about this moment. They'd prepared for it. This wasn't their secret being revealed. They'd been living with this knowledge, probably for years. It was only me who was supposed to be shocked. Me and my daughters. I looked at Caroline, and my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. My strong, composed Caroline had tears streaming down her face. Her phone had fallen from her hand onto the carpet. She was staring at her father like she'd never seen him before. Jennifer was being held up by her husband. Her face had gone completely white, and she was shaking her head over and over, denial written in every line of her body. Sarah had handed off her baby to someone, I don't even know who, and was standing with her hands balled into fists at her sides. Of my 3 daughters, she looked the most like me in that moment. Not sad, not shocked, furious. The room had fallen into the kind of silence that feels thick, suffocating. No one knew what to do. Guests were frozen in place, some half standing as if they wanted to leave, but couldn't remember how their legs worked. Plates were suspended halfway to mouths. Conversations died mid-word. My neighbor, Helen, who I'd known for 23 years, was staring at Richard with her mouth literally hanging open. The pastor from our church, the same man who had counseled us through what I thought were minor marital hiccups over the years, looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I know this changes things, Richard was saying, still talking like he was delivering good news instead of dropping a nuclear bomb into the center of his family. But I'm hoping, I'm believing that we can all come together, that we can be one big blended family, that we can support each other and love each other. Support each other. Love each other. He wanted me to love the woman who'd been his mistress for 30 years. He wanted my daughters to accept his affair children as their siblings. He wanted us all to just smile and make room at the table and pretend that this betrayal was actually a blessing. The rage that rose in me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It was molten, burning, consuming. It started in my chest and spread through my veins like poison, like fire. My hands were shaking, not with fear or weakness, but with the effort of containing the scream that was building in my throat. 30 years. 30 years he'd been playing house with another woman. How many times had he said he was working late? How many business trips had actually been visits to this other family? How many times had I believed him, trusted him, never questioned because I thought we had something sacred? How many times had he come home from her bed to mine? The thought made me want to vomit. I realized people were watching me, waiting for my reaction, waiting to see if I would cry, scream, collapse, run from the room, waiting for the wronged wife to perform her grief for their entertainment. Richard turned to look at me, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty in his face. Like maybe finally he was beginning to realize that this wasn't going to go the way he'd planned. Margaret, he said softly, and there was something almost pleading in his voice. Say something, please. Say something. He wanted me to say something. What does a woman say when her husband of 47 years tells her he's had an entire secret family for 30 of those years? What words exist in any language to adequately express the betrayal, the rage, the absolute destruction of everything you thought was real? But here's what Richard didn't know. Here's what no one in that room knew except for me. I wasn't shocked. Oh, I was devastated. I was furious. I was so filled with rage and pain that I thought my heart might actually stop beating from the weight of it. But I wasn't shocked because I'd known about Diana for 12 years. I'd known about Michael and Patricia for 12 years. And for 12 years, I'd been planning for exactly this moment. So instead of crying, instead of screaming, instead of giving him the reaction he expected, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who had been underestimated for far too long. It was the smile of someone who held all the cards and was about to lay them on the table. I set down my plate on the nearest surface. My hands were steady now. The rage was still there, burning just as hot, but it was controlled now, focused, turned into something sharp and useful. I walked toward Richard, slowly, deliberately, each step measured and purposeful. The room seemed to hold its breath. Diana took a step back. She saw something in my face that frightened her. Good, she should be frightened. But I didn't even look at her. She was nothing. She was a symptom, not the disease. Richard was the disease. Richard, who had looked me in the eye every day for 30 years while lying. Richard, who had slept in my bed, eaten at my table, held his grandchildren while carrying this secret. I stopped directly in front of him. We were the same height now. Age had shrunk him a little while I'd stayed relatively tall. I looked directly into those hazel eyes that I'd once found so kind. I've been waiting for this day, I said quietly, calmly. The voice of a woman completely in control. Confusion flickered across his face. What? From my pocket, I pulled out a small wrapped box. I'd wrapped it myself this morning before the party. Purple paper with a silver ribbon. My favorite colors. I'd been carrying it with me, waiting. I held it out to him. This is for you, I said. He looked at the box like it might bite him. Margaret, I don't understand. Take it, I said, and there was steel in my voice now. Command, the voice of a woman who would not be disobeyed. His hand shook slightly as he took the box from me. The room was watching, all eyes on us. My daughters looked confused. The guests looked horrified. Diana looked like she wanted to run. Open it, I said. Margaret, maybe we should talk privately. Open it. The words cracked through the room like a whip. Not loud, but sharp. Dangerous. Several people flinched. Richard's hands fumbled with the wrapping paper. He tore it clumsily, revealing a simple white box underneath. The kind of box you might use for jewelry or a watch or some other small gift. The irony was that what was inside was worth far more than any jewelry. Everyone in that room was leaning forward now. Curiosity had overcome shock, at least temporarily. They all wanted to see what was in that box. What kind of gift does a betrayed wife give her cheating husband on the day he reveals his affair family to the world? Richard lifted the lid slowly. I watched his face. I wanted to see the exact moment understanding hit. I wanted to see the precise second when he realized he'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. His forehead creased in confusion as he looked inside. He pulled out the first item, a piece of paper folded neatly. "What is this?" he asked, his voice uncertain now. "Read it," I said, out loud. "I think everyone here has a right to know, don't you? Since we're being so honest today, since we're sharing all our secrets." He unfolded the paper. I watched his eyes scan the first few lines. I watched the color drain from his face. "Margaret," he started. "Out loud," I commanded. Caroline had moved closer now, and Jennifer too. They were standing on either side of me, and I felt Jennifer take my hand. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew I needed support. I squeezed her hand back. My strong, sweet Jennifer. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. "This is a deed transfer." Louder, I said. He cleared his throat. His hands were shaking badly now. "This is a deed transfer for the property at 1247 Maple Street." That was our address, our home. Transferring ownership from joint tenancy to Margaret Ann Morrison alone. The date on that document was 3 years old. 3 years ago, I'd gone to a lawyer and restructured everything. While Richard thought we jointly owned our home, I'd quietly, legally, made sure it was mine alone. "Keep going," I said. "There's more in the box." He pulled out the next document. This one he didn't need to read aloud. His face told the story. It was the restructuring of our bank accounts. What had been joint accounts had been carefully, legally separated. The bulk of our savings, the money I'd inherited from my parents, the money I'd carefully invested and grown over the decades, was in my name only. The next document, the business. Richard had run a small but successful consulting firm for 30 years. What he didn't know was that I'd been a silent partner all along. My inheritance had funded the startup costs. My name had been on the paperwork from the beginning, buried in legal language he'd never bothered to read carefully. And 12 years ago, I'd restructured things. I was the majority owner. I always had been. "Keep looking," I said, and my voice was like ice now. "There's one more thing." His hands were shaking so badly, he almost dropped the box. He pulled out an envelope. Not a legal document this time. Just a simple white envelope with his name written on it in my handwriting. "That one you can read to yourself," I said quietly. "For now." He opened it. Inside was a letter. A letter I'd written and rewritten 100 times over the years. A letter that had held all my rage, all my pain, all my bitter knowledge. I watched him read it. I knew what it said. I'd written it after all. But seeing him read it, seeing his face crumble as he processed the words, that was something special. The letter explained it all. It explained that I'd discovered his secret 12 years ago, that I'd hired a private investigator who documented everything: the apartment he rented for Diana, the school records for Michael and Patricia with his name listed as father, the financial records showing money being siphoned from our accounts to support his second family. It explained that I'd taken that information and I'd done what any smart woman would do. I'd protected myself and my daughters. I'd restructured our assets. I'd consulted with lawyers. I'd built an ironclad legal fortress around everything we'd built together, except now it wasn't ours. It was mine. And then the final paragraph, the kill shot, the words I'd dreamed of delivering for 12 years. "If you ever choose to bring your betrayal into the light, if you ever choose them over the family who loved you faithfully, if you ever force me to acknowledge publicly what you've done, your choices will cost you everything. The house you're standing in, mine. The business you think you built, mine. The savings you're counting on for retirement, mine. The comfortable life you've been living while playing house with your mistress, over." I watched him finish reading. I watched the paper slip from his fingers and flutter to the floor. I watched him look at me with something like horror in his eyes. You knew, he whispered. You knew all this time. I knew, I confirmed. My voice was steady, strong. The voice of a woman who had won a war he didn't even know he was fighting. The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once. Guests were whispering to each other, some with shocked looks, some with what looked almost like admiration. My daughters were staring at me like they'd never seen me before. You knew? Caroline said, and her voice cracked. You knew about this for 12 years, and you never told us? I turned to look at my eldest daughter, my brilliant, fierce Carolyn. I was protecting you, I said simply. All of you. What would telling you have accomplished except to break your heart sooner? But you stayed with him, Jennifer said, and there were tears streaming down her face. You stayed with him knowing. I stayed with him because leaving would have meant losing half of everything, I said, and my voice was hard now. Leaving would have meant he got to keep half the house your grandfather built with his own hands, half the money my mother left to me, half the business I funded with my inheritance. Leaving would have meant rewarding his betrayal. I turned back to Richard. He was still standing there, frozen, looking at the documents scattered at his feet like they were pieces of his life exploding. You wanted to have it all, didn't you? I said to him, and all the anger I'd been holding in for 12 years was seeping into my voice now. You wanted your dutiful wife at home, keeping your house, raising your children, supporting your business, and you wanted your young mistress on the side, giving you excitement, making you feel like you weren't getting old. You wanted two families, two lives. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. Margaret, please, he started. I'm not finished, I cut him off. For 30 years, you lied to me. Every day, every single day. Do you know what that feels like? Do you have any concept of what it does to a person to realize that the man they trusted more than anyone in the world has been living a double life? My voice was rising now. The calm was cracking. The anger was spilling out. How many times did you kiss me and then go to her? How many times did you sit at dinner with our daughters and listen to them talk about their lives while you hid an entire other family? How many times did you hold our grandchildren and think about your other children that you were keeping secret? I loved you, he said weakly. I love you. I never stopped. Don't. The word exploded from me. Don't you dare talk to me about love. You don't know the meaning of the word. Love is honest. Love is faithful. Love doesn't split itself between two families for 30 years. I looked at Diana then. She was crying, silent tears running down her face. And you, I said to her, you knew he was married. You knew he had a wife and children at home. But you didn't care, did you? As long as you got what you wanted. I didn't, she started. You didn't what? Didn't know? Didn't mean for it to happen? Don't insult my intelligence. 30 years, Diana. You were with him for 30 years. That's not an accident. That's not a mistake. That's a choice you made every single day. I turned to look at Michael and Patricia. They looked young suddenly, despite being in their 30s. They looked lost. I don't blame you, I said to them, and my voice softened slightly. You didn't ask for any of this. You didn't choose to be born into this mess. But you need to understand something. Your father's choices today, they're going to cost him dearly. I looked back at Richard. He was crying now, actual tears running down his face. In 47 years of marriage, I'd seen him cry maybe 3 times. When each of our daughters was born, when his father died. That was it. But he was crying now. Everything you thought you had, I said to him, it's gone. The house, mine. I already showed you the deed. You can take your clothes and your personal items. And that's all. The business, mine. I'm the majority owner and I've already spoken with my lawyer. You'll be bought out for the minimum legal amount. The bank accounts? I've already moved my money. What's left in the joint account is barely enough to rent a small apartment for a few months. You can't do this, he whispered. I already have, I said. The documents in that box, those are copies. The originals have been filed and recorded for years. You've been living in my house, working at my business, spending my money, and you were too arrogant to notice. I stepped closer to him, close enough that only he could hear my next words. Did you really think I was stupid enough not to find out? Did you really think you were clever enough to hide an entire family from me for 30 years? I'm a woman, Richard, not an idiot. We notice things. We notice when our husbands start working late 3 times a week like clockwork. We notice when money goes missing from accounts. We notice when you start buying cologne you never wear around us. I stepped back so the room could hear me again. 12 years ago, I hired a private investigator. It took him exactly 3 weeks to find out everything. Diana's address, your children's names, their schools, their birthdays. He documented everything, every visit, every dollar you spent on them, every lie you told me. Richard was shaking his head over and over. Why didn't you confront me then? Why did you wait? Because I'm smarter than you, I said simply. I knew that if I confronted you immediately, you'd beg for forgiveness. You'd promise to end it. You'd cry and swear it would never happen again. And maybe you'd mean it, or maybe you'd just get better at hiding it. But either way, I'd be the woman who took you back after you cheated. I'd be the woman who forgave the unforgivable. I shook my head. No, I decided I would wait. I would protect myself and my daughters. I would make sure that when the truth finally came out, and I knew it would eventually, you would be the one with nothing, not me. But you stayed married to me, he said, his voice breaking. You shared a bed with me. How could you do that if you knew? How could I? That question has haunted me for 12 years. How could I wake up next to him every day knowing what he was? How could I let him touch me? How could I sit across the breakfast table from him and make small talk about the weather? It was the hardest thing I've ever done, I admitted, and for the first time, my voice wavered. Do you want to know how many nights I lay awake next to you, feeling sick? Do you want to know how many times I had to excuse myself from the room because I couldn't stand to look at your face? Do you want to know what it cost me, emotionally, to pretend everything was fine while I was dying inside? The tears came then. I'd been holding them back, keeping them contained, but they spilled over now. 12 years of pain, of rage, of betrayal. It all came pouring out. I sacrificed my own peace of mind to protect my future, I said through my tears. I sacrificed my happiness to make sure you didn't get to win. I sacrificed 12 years of my life to make sure that when this moment came, and I knew it would come, I would be the one left standing. Jennifer was crying too now, holding on to me. Caroline had moved to my other side. Sarah was standing behind me, her hands on my shoulders. My daughters, my beautiful daughters, surrounding me, supporting me. You've destroyed our family, Caroline said to her father. Her voice was cold, hard. I'd never heard her sound like that. You've destroyed everything. I was trying to make us bigger, Richard said desperately. I was trying to bring everyone together. On her birthday, Sarah spit out, you decided to reveal that you've been cheating on our mother for 30 years on her birthday. in front of all her friends and family. You humiliated her. You humiliated all of us. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, Jennifer said. You don't understand what you've done. You don't understand what you've lost. Richard looked around the room desperately, like he was searching for an ally. But there was no one. The guests were all looking at him with disgust or pity or shock. His other family, Diana and Michael and Patricia, were huddled together near the door, looking like they wanted to disappear. The letter, I said, pointing to the paper on the floor. Pick it up. Read the last part out loud. He bent down slowly, his movements those of a man who'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. He picked up the letter with shaking hands. He read the last paragraph, the one I hadn't mentioned yet. His voice was barely audible. I'm giving you a choice right now. You can stay with me, end your relationship with Diana, never see those children again, and we can pretend this never happened. We can go back to our life. I won't divorce you. I won't take everything. We can live out our remaining years together in relative peace. He paused, looked up at me with something like hope in his eyes. Keep reading, I said coldly. Or, he continued, you can choose them. Choose your mistress and your affair children. Choose the family you built on lies and betrayal. But if you do, you lose everything else. You lose the house, the business, the money. You lose your daughters and your grandchildren. You lose the life you've built here. Choose wisely, Richard. Choose carefully, because this choice, it's final. The room was completely silent. Every eye was on Richard. He looked at me, then at Diana, then at our daughters, then back at me. You're making me choose? He said. How is that fair? How can you ask me to? How is it fair? I screamed, and the sound was raw, primal. How is any of this fair? You had 30 years where you got to have everything, where you got to have me and her, where you got to have our daughters and your affair children. You got to have it all while I got lies, while I got betrayal, while I got to sit at home like a fool, thinking I had a faithful husband. I was sobbing now, really sobbing, 12 years of held-in emotion pouring out all at once. You don't get to talk to me about fair. You don't get to act like you're the victim here. You made your choices, Richard. Every day for 30 years, you made the choice to lie to me, to betray me, to split yourself between two families. Now you finally have to make a real choice, one or the other. And if you choose them, you lose me. You lose this house. You lose the business. You lose the money. You lose your daughters. You lose your grandchildren. You lose everything. My daughters were holding me up now. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. All the rage, all the pain, all the carefully controlled composure I'd maintained for 12 years, it was all crumbling. Caroline was crying. Jennifer was crying. Sarah was the only one who wasn't crying, but her face was set in lines of absolute fury. Get out, Sarah said to Richard. Get out of this house right now. Sarah, please, he started. I said, get out, she screamed. Get out before I physically throw you out. Richard looked at Diana. She was pale as death, standing there with her children, realizing that this fairy tale reunion wasn't going to have a happy ending. Diana, Richard said weakly. She shook her head. I can't. I can't do this right now. I need to leave. We need to leave. But you said this would be fine, Diana said, and there was accusation in her voice. You said your wife would understand. You said we could all be a family together. You said, he lied to you too, I said, and there was almost pity in my voice. Almost. That's what he does. He lies. He tells people what they want to hear. Did he tell you he was going to leave me? Did he promise that someday it would just be the two of you? Diana's face told me everything I needed to know. 30 years, I said to her. 30 years, and he never left me. What makes you think he would now? Especially now that he knows leaving me means losing everything? I love him, Diana said, and she sounded broken. So did I replied. Look where it got me. Diana gathered her children, our husband's children, the children he'd kept secret for decades, and they fled, literally almost ran from the house. The door slammed behind them, and Richard flinched like he'd been shot. The guests were leaving too, quietly, awkwardly, gathering their things and slipping out. What do you say in a situation like this? How do you make polite goodbyes after witnessing a family implode? Helen, my neighbor, paused on her way out. She took my hand and squeezed it. You're the strongest woman I know, she whispered. I couldn't respond. I just nodded. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty, except for me, my daughters, and Richard. The decorations were still up, purple and silver streamers, flowers, the remains of my birthday party scattered across every surface, half-eaten food, abandoned plates, the ruins of what was supposed to be a celebration. Richard was still standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the documents that proved his downfall. Margaret, he said, please, we can work this out. We can what? I asked tiredly. All the rage had burned out, leaving just exhaustion behind. Work this out? Go to counseling? Pretend this didn't happen? I'll end it with Diana, completely. I'll never see her again. Or Michael and Patricia. I'll choose you. I'm choosing you. You're not choosing me, I said flatly. You're choosing my house, my money, my business. You're choosing the comfortable life you thought you had. That's not the same thing as choosing me. That's not true, isn't it? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. If I didn't have the house, the money, the business, if I was just me, broken and betrayed and empty, would you still choose me? Or would you choose Diana and your other children? He didn't answer. He couldn't. That's what I thought, I said. Caroline spoke up then. Dad, you need to leave. Mom's right. You need to get your things and you need to leave. This is my home too, he protested weakly. No, Jennifer said firmly. It's not. It's Mom's home. She has the deed to prove it. You're just someone who's been living here. How can you girls take her side? Richard asked desperately. She lied to you too. She knew about Diana for 12 years and never told you. She lied to protect herself, Sarah said. You lied to betray all of us. There's a difference. Richard looked at each of his daughters in turn, looking for sympathy, for understanding, for someone to take his side. But they were all looking at him like he was a stranger, like the man they thought was their father had been replaced by someone they didn't recognize. Pack a bag, I said quietly. Take what you need for a few days. You can come back for the rest later, but you need to leave now. Where am I supposed to go? He asked, and he sounded so lost, so much like a child. I almost felt sorry for him, almost. That's not my problem, I said. Maybe Diana will take you in. Maybe you can get a hotel. Maybe you can sleep in your car. I don't care, but you can't stay here. He stood there for another long moment, and I could see him trying to decide if he should fight this, if he should refuse to leave, if he should try to assert some kind of authority. But he saw the look on my face. He saw the determination in our daughter's eyes. He saw the legal documents on the floor that proved he had no ground to stand on. Slowly, he walked toward the stairs. Each step seemed to take tremendous effort. He looked like a man walking to his execution. We listened to him moving around upstairs, drawers opening and closing, the sound of a suitcase being pulled from the closet. "Mom," Caroline said softly, "are you okay?" Was I okay? What a question. My husband of 47 years had just revealed he'd been living a double life for 30 of those years. I just revealed that I'd known about it for 12 years and had been planning my revenge. I just kicked him out of the house. My birthday party had ended in complete disaster. Was I okay? No, I said honestly. I'm not okay. I don't know if I'll ever be okay again. Jennifer hugged me, then Caroline, then Sarah. We stood there in the middle of the destroyed party, holding each other, crying together. Richard came back downstairs with a single suitcase. He looked at us, all wrapped around each other, and something in his expression crumbled. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so, so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I said. "Sorry doesn't give me back the 30 years you stole from me. Sorry doesn't undo the betrayal. Sorry is just a word, and words from you don't mean anything anymore." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. "I do love you, Margaret. I know you don't believe me, but I do." "Love isn't something you say," I replied. "It's something you do, and everything you did for 30 years was a lie." He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like the ending of everything. That was 6 months ago. 6 months since the worst birthday party in history. 6 months since my life exploded and reformed into something I barely recognize. Richard is living with Diana now, in a small apartment across town. Not the house she'd been living in before. Apparently, he'd been renting that for her, and when the money stopped, so did the lease. They're cramped and struggling from what I hear. His income from the business, what little I'm legally required to give him as part of the buyout, barely covers their expenses. Michael and Patricia, his affair children, apparently aren't speaking to him. From what my daughters have pieced together through social media and mutual acquaintances, they're furious with him for how he handled things. They'd known about us for years, apparently. Diana had told them about their father's other family when they were teenagers. They'd been pressuring him to come clean, to integrate the family somehow, but they'd imagined some gentle revelation, some carefully planned meeting. Not their father dropping a bomb in the middle of a birthday party and destroying everyone's lives in the process. So Richard lost them too. Lost all of his children, from both families. None of them want anything to do with him. I filed for a divorce the week after my birthday. After 47 years of marriage, I'm going to be single again at 73 years old. The thought terrifies me and liberates me in equal measure. My daughters are struggling. They're in therapy, all three of them, trying to process the betrayal, trying to reconcile the father they thought they knew with the man who's capable of such sustained deception. They're angry with him, obviously, but they're also angry with me. "Why didn't you tell us?" Caroline asked me over coffee a month ago. "Why did you let us keep loving him when you knew what he was?" "Because he's your father," I said. "I couldn't take that from you, not until absolutely necessary. But we had a right to know." "Maybe," I admitted. "Maybe you did, but I made a choice to protect you from that pain for as long as I could. Maybe it was the wrong choice. I don't know. I did the best I could with an impossible situation. They're working on forgiving me. I think they will, eventually. We're family. We're all we have now. The divorce will be final in a few months. Richard is fighting it, of course, trying to claim he deserves half of everything, but I have documentation going back years showing that the house, the business, and the bulk of our assets were always mine. My lawyers are confident. I'll keep the house. This house that's been my home for 43 years. I'll keep the garden I planted with my own hands. I'll keep the rooms where I raised my daughters. I'll keep the memories, both good and bad. I'll keep the business too. I'm actually running it now, with Caroline's help. Turns out I'm pretty good at it. Who knew? Turns out that all those years of managing a household and raising children and supporting my husband's career actually taught me a lot about organization and management and getting things done. The money? That was always mine anyway. My inheritance from my parents, carefully invested and grown over the decades. Richard's contribution to our finances was minimal compared to what I brought to the marriage, but I'd never thrown that in his face. I'd always thought of it as ours, together. But ours doesn't mean anything when your partner has been lying to you for 30 years. I'm trying to rebuild. That's what everyone keeps telling me I need to do. Rebuild your life, Margaret. Start fresh. This is a new chapter. But how do you rebuild when the foundation was rotten all along? How do you start fresh when you're 73 years old and everything you thought was real turned out to be a lie? I'm angry. I'm still so angry. Some days the rage hits me out of nowhere and I have to sit down and breathe through it. Rage at Richard for betraying me. Rage at Diana for helping him do it. Rage at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not confronting him immediately when I found out, for wasting 12 more years of my life living a lie. I'm in therapy too now. My therapist keeps asking me if I regret waiting, if I regret staying with Richard for 12 years after I found out about Diana. I don't know how to answer that. Part of me wishes I'd confronted him immediately. Wishes I'd kicked him out the day I found out. Divorce be damned. At least then I wouldn't have wasted 12 more years. But another part of me knows that if I'd done that, I'd have lost half of everything. I'd have lost my house, my security, my future. I'd have rewarded his betrayal with a comfortable settlement. This way? This way I won, at least financially, at least in the eyes of the law. But it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like everyone lost. Richard lost his families, both of them. Diana lost her fairy tale. Michael and Patricia lost their father. My daughters lost their trust. I lost 47 years of my life. Nobody won, but at least I'm not destitute. At least I have my house, my security, my independence. At least I'll be able to live out the rest of my life with dignity, without being dependent on a man who betrayed me. Is that enough? I don't know. Some days I wake up in my big, empty house and I feel nothing but relief. He's gone. The liar is gone. I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to wake up next to him and feel sick. I don't have to watch him interact with our grandchildren and wonder how he can smile at them while keeping such massive secrets. Other days I wake up and I feel so alone I can barely breathe. 47 years, nearly half a century. Most of my adult life was spent with this man, and now he's just gone. Everything I thought we built together was a lie, but it was still my life. And now I have to figure out who I am without it. I'm 73 years old. How do you figure out who you are at 73? My daughters help. They come over several times a week. They bring the grandchildren. We're building new traditions, new memories that aren't contaminated by Richard's lies. It's slow going, but it's something. My friends have been supportive for the most part, though I've noticed some distance from a few of them. I think the whole situation makes them uncomfortable. I think some of them wonder if they should have known, if there were signs they missed. I think it makes them question their own marriages, their own trust. I don't blame them for pulling away. I'm a reminder that happy marriages aren't always what they seem, that trust can be misplaced, that the people we think we know can be strangers. I'm a cautionary tale now instead of one half of the perfect couple. There's a strange freedom in that, actually. No more pretending. No more being the ideal wife, the supportive partner, the woman who has it all figured out. I can just be me now, broken, angry, betrayed me. People keep asking if I'll date again. The thought makes me want to laugh or cry. I'm not sure which. How could I possibly trust another man? How could I possibly open my heart to someone new when the man I trusted most in the world, the man I was married to for 47 years, turned out to be a liar? No, I think I'm done with romance, done with marriage, done with trusting anyone that completely ever again. I have my daughters, my grandchildren, my house, my garden, my business. That's enough. It has to be enough because I can't go through this again. I can't survive another betrayal. I want to tell you something important, something I wish someone had told me when I was younger. Secrets age like fruit, not wine. They don't get better with time. They don't become more refined, more valuable. They rot. They decay. They contaminate everything around them. Richard's secret rotted our marriage from the inside out. By the time it came to light, there was nothing left to save. Just the appearance of a marriage, hollow and destroyed. My secret, my knowledge of his betrayal, rotted something in me too. Those 12 years I spent knowing, pretending not to know, building my legal protections while maintaining the facade of a happy marriage, they cost me. They cost me my peace of mind, my ability to trust, my ability to be truly present in my own life. I spent 12 years as a ghost in my own marriage, going through the motions, playing a part, all while dying inside. Was it worth it? Did I do the right thing by waiting, by protecting myself legally before acting? I honestly don't know. My daughters think I did. My lawyer thinks I did. My financial advisor certainly thinks I did. But my therapist asks hard questions. She asks if I gave up 12 years of potential happiness, whether that was finding happiness with Richard if he'd been willing to change, or finding happiness on my own after leaving him, just to make sure I won the financial battle. She asks if I prioritized money over my own well-being. She asks if revenge was worth the cost. I don't have good answers. What I do know is this: strength grows quietly until the day it's needed. For 12 years, I grew my strength in secret. I built my fortress brick by brick, document by document, legal protection by legal protection. I did it quietly, secretly. While Richard thought he was the only one with secrets, I was building my own. And when the day came, when he finally revealed his betrayal, I was ready. I wasn't the devastated, helpless wife he expected. I wasn't the woman who would collapse and beg him to stay. I wasn't the victim of his story. I was the survivor, the strategist, the woman who held all the cards. Does that make me strong? Or does it make me calculating? Cold? I've been called both in the months since my birthday. People have opinions. Some people think I'm a hero, a woman who refused to be a victim. Others think I'm vindictive, cruel for staying with Richard while secretly plotting against him. I don't know what I am anymore. I know I'm hurt. God, I'm so hurt. The betrayal cuts deeper than I can express. 30 years. He looked me in the eye for 30 years while living a double life. How do you process that? How do you accept that the person you trusted most was lying the entire time? I know I'm angry. The rage hasn't faded. Some days it's all I can feel. Rage at Richard. Rage at Diana. Rage at a universe that let this happen. rage at myself for not seeing it sooner. I know I'm alone, more alone than I've ever been in my life. After spending nearly 50 years as part of a couple, I'm now just me, Margaret, not Richard's wife, not half of anything, just myself, and I'm still figuring out who that is. So here I am, 73 years old, divorced after 47 years of marriage, living in a house that's too big for one person, running a business I never thought I'd be running, trying to rebuild relationships with daughters who are struggling to trust me, trying to find some kind of peace in the wreckage. This isn't the life I imagined when I was 24 and marrying a man with kind eyes. This isn't the peaceful golden years I thought I'd earned after decades of being a good wife, a good mother, a good person. But it's the life I have, and I'm trying to make the best of it. Some days that means getting up and tending my garden, finding peace in the simple act of nurturing something beautiful. Some days it means diving into business problems, finding satisfaction in solving challenges, and making decisions. Some days it means playing with my grandchildren and remembering that even though my marriage was a lie, the family we built is real. And some days it means sitting in my empty house and crying for everything I've lost. Both things can be true. I can be strong and broken at the same time. I can be relieved and devastated. I can be free and trapped by my past. I'm learning that healing isn't linear. It's not a straight path from pain to peace. It's messy and complicated, and some days I feel like I'm moving backwards. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. After everything, after the betrayal, after the revelation, after the destruction of everything I thought was real, I'm still here. Richard took 30 years of my life. He stole them with his lies and his double life and his betrayal. But he doesn't get the rest. The years I have left, however many or few they may be, those are mine, mine to rebuild, mine to rediscover who I am, mine to find some kind of peace or happiness, or at least contentment. He doesn't get to take any more from me. And that feels like the beginning of something. Not victory exactly, not healing, not yet, but the beginning of reclaiming myself. So I want to ask you something. I want to ask all of you who are watching this, who are listening to this story. What would you have done in my place? Would you have confronted your spouse immediately upon finding out about the betrayal? Would you have left right away, walked away from the marriage, no matter what it cost you financially? Or would you have done what I did? Would you have stayed, quietly building your protections, waiting for the right moment to strike? Would you forgive a betrayal like this? Could you ever trust again after 30 years of lies? I'm not asking because I need validation. I'm not asking because I'm looking for people to tell me I did the right thing. Honestly, I'm not even sure what the right thing was. I'm asking because I want to know I'm not alone. I want to know that other people wrestle with these impossible questions. I want to know that the messy, complicated choices we make when our worlds fall apart, that they're human, that they're understandable, that there's no perfect answer. Comment below. Tell me your stories. Tell me about betrayals you've survived, or secrets you've kept, or impossible choices you've had to make. Tell me I'm not alone in this, because that's the hardest part, you know? Not the legal battles or the financial restructuring or even the divorce itself. The hardest part is feeling like you're the only person in the world who understands what it's like to have everything you believed in turn out to be a lie. The hardest part is the loneliness. So talk to me. Share your stories. Let's build a community of survivors, of people who made it through the unthinkable. Let's remind each other that we're not alone, that we're still standing, that even in our brokenness, we're strong. Because strength, true strength, It grows quietly, in the dark places where no one's watching. It grows in the moments when you want to give up, but you keep going anyway. It grows when you're breaking apart, but you hold yourself together long enough to protect what matters. And when the day comes that you need it, and that day will come, your strength will be there, waiting, ready. You'll surprise yourself with how strong you really are. I surprised myself. After 73 years of thinking I knew who I was, I discovered I was stronger than I ever imagined. Harder, too. Colder, maybe, but strong and still standing. And that has to count for something, doesn't it?